Welcome to the Wisepreneurs podcast. I'm Nigel Rawlins. You want to work independently, but independence requires consistent revenue, visible expertise, and a practice that sustains rather than exhausts. Most people get stuck in that gap. They want out, but they haven't built the practice yet. This podcast is for independent professionals building practice on their own terms. We explore how accumulated wisdom, AI tools, and collaborative partnerships create sustainable advantages. As John Younger says, you can't sell knowledge anymore, but you can sell wisdom. Let's begin. Darren Waldron is an Australian carpenter living in Switzerland who taught himself to build AI automation systems in his evenings after work. His story matters for independent professionals because it proves you don't need a computer science degree to build the tools your business needs. Darren saw a universal problem: businesses spending thousands of dollars generating leads, then losing them through slow and inconsistent follow-up. Rather than wait for somebody else to solve it, he builds systems that re-engage dormant contacts and respond to new inquiries within minutes. Today, we're exploring what becomes possible when you stop assuming technology is someone else's domain. Darren, welcome to the Wisepreneurs podcast. Can you tell us something about yourself and where you're from?
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm originally from Australia. I grew up in a country town near Hamilton on a farm originally. And then grew up there, did my schooling in a little place called Coleraine and moved into Hamilton, did my high schooling there, moved on to a apprenticeship as a cabinet maker joiner, and eventually moved into carpentry after that.
How many years were you working as a carpenter?
I'm still working as a carpenter now in my mind. I still love being on the tools every now and then. I was probably about 15 years in total, a little bit more. But during that time, I was running my own business as a carpenter and joiner for quite a while. I had the luxury of having a really good boss or a mentor at the time who said that, look, with the skills you've got, we can build houses, and then at a certain point you can go back to your factory or set up shop, and then you can start making all the joinery for the houses we build. And I'll be forever grateful to him for allowing me to do that. So that's how I started my own business when I was quite young.
Well, Hamilton's about 250 kilometres away from where I am because I'm in Clifton Springs, which is just out of Geelong. But one of the reasons we're talking is you don't live in Australia anymore. Where are you?
No. I moved away from Australia, which was originally just kind of a travel at the start. I moved to Canada, actually. I lived in Vancouver for a year and a half. And on the way over, I stopped off in Hawaii, and that's where I met my beautiful wife now of almost 11 years, 12 years now. I met her in Hawaii. And I lived in Vancouver for a year and a half and then moved to London after that for another 2 years because the relationship continued to get serious and it was a bit cheaper to fly from London to Zurich. And that's where I am now in Switzerland.
And in that time, you were still working as a carpenter?
Yeah, all that time when I was in Canada and London as well, and also for about another six years while I was here in Switzerland as well.
One of the reasons we are talking is because you're still working, but you're also pivoting in a sense into a new business. So let's just mention that business and then we'll go into a bit more detail about how it all works together.
Yeah, sure. So I'm still working a day job at the moment because the business that I have started, which is it's called DS Waldron GmbH, which is just a limited company here. And I focus on revamping leads for companies using AI, SMS, and WhatsApp.
Okay. So we should really talk about what we mean by leads because now, there'll be some of the listeners who may be thinking of starting their own business. Now, mainly they're professionals. And what we're talking about really is marketing. And one of the things you market for is to get customers or get clients, which we call leads. Now, you're a carpenter and you're getting into marketing. So let's explain that a little bit more. what do you mean by helping these companies get leads? How do you do that?
The first step that I do is I re-engage with an existing database. So that means that any company that's been running ads or marketing campaigns previously, they never convert 100% of their leads that have been generated from these marketing campaigns. So the ones that didn't convert, they fall off the side into their database. Now, what I do, I build a custom Android. And when I say Android, it's literally just an automated system that is purely made for a business. It's got their brand voice, it knows their product, it knows their services. And I then set it up so then it can speak like a person within the business, knows all the information about it, and it re-engages with this database. And it checks if they've ever found what they're looking for, if they're still interested in a product or a service. And that's done via SMS or WhatsApp. If one of these leads within the database is still interested in a product or a service, then we can set it up that it kind of filters the people that are interested. It can qualify them as well if there's certain criteria that a lead needs to have or to meet. And then it can automatically book into a salesperson's calendar purely via the chat.
Okay. So did you say when you were going to school out of Hamilton, or was it Coleraine?
It was primary school and high school was in Hamilton.
Was that a little tiny school?
I wouldn't say it was small, but no, it was a decent size. How many people exactly, I'm not too sure.
I taught in some very little tiny one-teacher schools, in fact. They were great. So what I'm hearing, you went to a country school, went to a bigger town, which is Hamilton, became an apprentice, working on the tools. And here you've devised an automation to help mine a database, reach out to customers, which this is all marketing. And you're a carpenter, so you're not a geek. So how did this come about? I mean, where in your head did you decide that this is necessary?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in tech and IT, but I've never gone down that path because I'm a tradie and I work a lot better with my hands, I think, than what I have with my mind in the past. But the reason why I've got into this now is purely from my own frustration or my personal experiences. I would be interested in a product or a service, and I would put my information into their leads form, and I would never hear anything back. If anything, it would be an email. Thanks for contacting me. We'll get back to you within 48 or 72 hours. And that contact never really happened. So in that time, the 1 to 2 to 3 days, I would say, I want this information now. I'll go to the next person. So I'd go to the next business. And then I'd end up getting the same response. And it was over and over again. I'm like, in this day and age, there has to be a better way to do this. And I've always been using ChatGPT and keeping a close eye on how AI is progressing. Since 2022, I think it was, I started using ChatGPT. And then it was just, I got more and more interested in trying to think outside the box and worked out that these type of things are possible. There are courses out there that help you learn to do this if you're interested enough. And I started going down that track, and it evolved, and now there's a few different services that I do that focus on that type of engagement. And the funny thing is, I've actually been the problem in my own business many years ago as well. So a perfect example is within the trade industry. And this was one of the points that kind of triggered me when I built our apartment here. I would turn around, and everybody does it, which is the best practice to do. I got 3 or 4 quotes to get fly screens put on this apartment because I don't really have fly screens here. If you do, it's kind of extra or out of the ordinary. So I went and got 4 different contractors to come and measure up, and that took quite a lot of time to get them here. I had to take time off work, be here. They measured, they went back to their offices, created the quotes, sent it back to me, and then I'd sit there and analyze all the 4 different ones. Same as what I used to do as a carpenter and a joiner myself. Send them out, and that was it. The service stopped. So I'd sit there, and you'd always have the cheapest, the most expensive, and the one thereabouts in the middle, or maybe two in the middle, and you kind of you level out the prices and think, why is that one like $2,000 more than this one? What could it be? And I always thought, even then, if one of these people reached out and called me or sent me a message and said, hey, Darren, I sent you the quote 2 days ago. Do you have any questions? Is there any uncertainty? What can we help you with? And that's one of the points where I thought, look, I had to then call each person and ask these questions, took time out of my day, time off work, to find out why is your quote 2,000 francs cheaper than the other person, and you've measured the same windows. So the time that I, as a consumer or a client, had to invest to find out those answers, that really annoyed me.
And it's still the same here in Australia. I mean, when you get fencing quotes and it takes a week for them to turn up and then they can't do it for another 3 weeks. So what you're seeing is the delays and then the frustration about why is the difference. So when you were a carpenter, you were working for yourself, is that right? If you're finding value in these conversations, I write a weekly newsletter that goes deeper into the same themes: positioning accumulated expertise, AI tools, partnerships, and building sustainable independent practice. It arrives Tuesday, no fluff, just practical thinking for independent professionals. You can subscribe for free at wisepreneurs.com.au.
Yeah. Yep. So I was out on my own, had to invest a lot of money in a vehicle, in a trailer, and all the tools to do all the work. And it was the same thing. But I always was in a lucky enough position, and I think in Australia in general, if you do a good job of what you do, you're never going to have to advertise. So there was the same thing. One person spoke to another and spoke to another, and we were never out of work.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing here too, is we got a number of quotes for the fence, never heard from them again unless we contacted them. But you're right, and I think that's the case. But even now, if sometimes if I order something online, because that's the thing I want to buy, sometimes you don't even hear back from them, and then it appears. So they don't even communicate back. But I was thinking in terms of when you were running your business, you've got a better sense of how that part of it works for, as you said, for your new clients that are using it. So what the problem is if you're a tradie or you're a small business or a one-person business, and what's happening nowadays is with AI, you can have million-dollar businesses run by one person. What you're telling me is you've got a system that will connect and keep in contact with people. In other words, you've got a digital assistant there that runs 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, I haven't thought of it like that, but in a way I do. And the thing is, I can then turn around and customize it to any type of business that also wants to have the same thing. And they can automate their follow-up. So it's not just the database reactivation that I do. That's kind of one thing to then proof of concept to a business. So I do that, and it's always on a performance base. So, and that purely means if I don't deliver any meetings by doing this service, the business doesn't have to pay, because I've already paid previously generating these leads from the last 6 or 12 months, and I don't think it's fair they need to pay again. But if I do generate a new possibility for them from doing this service, the database reactivation, that's where we agree a fee. Whatever that fee is, it varies, depends on whatever the product is. But the other one is when a company is running live ads or they're doing a marketing campaign now, even that, we always, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, we submit our details. And the time between someone submits their details, they have legitimate interest, and by the time someone in the business, in the sales team, actually contacts that lead, there's still a big time delay there. And that's another one that I do, which is speed to lead. So it can contact the person within 1 to 3 to 5 or even 8 minutes, whatever we can program that, however it's needed. Then it engages with those new leads directly, straight away. It can filter them, qualify them, and then book them into that salesperson's calendar whenever it's free.
which is pretty amazing when you think about it, because nowadays it is a 24-hour world. If you've got a service or a particular product, you're offering it from one part of the world, this thing works all day. See, what the thing about marketing is it's great to reach out, but what do you do when they reach back to you? And what you've done is you've automated that process, which I think is pretty powerful. Nobody can keep up with this sort of stuff, especially if you've got an in-demand product and you want to know more. And I know you can go onto a website and chat to the little chat thing there, which is pretty bloody useless, to be honest. I run a marketing services company, so I pay for, say, domain names, and I look after about 50 domain names. If I have a problem and I have to talk to a stupid chatbot, can't really answer the question, I'm getting angry. So I've just shifted all of my domain names to another service where they actually have somebody who answers. It doesn't matter when, they will answer and fix the problem. Now, that's where things go. So, but you're right. If somebody is trying to find out and wants to get a response, your system's really good. But what I'm really interested in is the fact that, you can mine their database of what we call cold leads.
Yeah.
Most consultants, and probably a lot of the people who want to be an independent consultant, the last thing in the world they want to do is do cold leads or try and reach out or get hold of people, because it's time consuming. And as you know, as even the tradies, you ask for a quote, you're lucky to get one within a week because they're busy. And if you're running a business, you're busy. So trying to get these responses, if you can automate it, it's brilliant. I think you've got something really good. That's the biggest problem. All the money that's spent on marketing to get the attention and then no follow through.
And that's one of the biggest things. Like, I've also noticed this because, again, coming from a tradies background, the learning curve that I've been on over the last 3 years, kind of building and constructing and learning this, it's huge, because you have even some of the biggest companies out there. You would think that you see ads everywhere, but not even these guys do that. As in, they don't follow up with their people, with their potential clients within minutes. And that's key. It's kind of, for me, it's a part of customer service. And also with the database reactivation, like if people are contacted, because it could be the case that, we got busy with the family or the kids, we had to do the homework and we didn't get back to it because our phone was there and we left it for 2 or 3 days and they kind of forgot about it. It's not a big issue. I just wanted some information. But then if there could always be in a database, whether it's 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 deep, if there's anywhere from 2 to 5% of those people that are still somewhat interested, or that you kind of get your name or get your company back at the top of mind, you'd be amazed at what happens. But because the company, they don't need to invest any resources, because it's a big risk for them. If they turn around and say, get on the phone and call these 25,000 people for the next 3 weeks or a month, that's going to be someone's salary that might not be of value to them. But if we can do that without interfering business as usual for a company, yet they're still getting highly qualified leads booked into their calendar, and they just need to turn up and pretty much sign on the dotted line or let the ink dry in a way, because the selling's already been done, then that's a huge value for them.
And the worst part, when I'm thinking about it, I've just you reminded me, is making those phone calls. I mean, it'd probably have to be the most boring job in the world, but it'd be a telemarketing job, wouldn't it? And most of us, the minute you get a telemarketer on the phone, you want to get off. Whereas yours is a message out, just checking in to find out what's going on. It's interesting in terms of marketing and spending all those marketing dollars. What they're seeking is new customers, but they're not seeking what they've got in the database. And obviously they're forgetting. And I keep coming back to the tradies, because tradies are a very, very simple business, but it's the epitome of business. It's all businesses are like a trades business. I don't think people realize that, you've got a product, you've got to sell it, and then you've got to deliver it, and then you've got to collect the cash. Every business does the same. I mean, it just depends how big they are. But my favorite tradie has done a lot of work on my house. I'll message him. I won't ring him because I know he's busy. If he's been busy all day, he's forgotten about me. I have to message him again the next day, and a couple of times later, he'll get back to me. But like you say, he's one I will wait for because he's really, really good. It's a lot more expensive now than when I did all the renovations. Okay, so you're an Aussie, an Australian in Switzerland selling an AI product. How does that work locally?
It's difficult. One, because I focus on kind of the English market, and with AI at the moment, it's a lot more English based, but it is always improving, as we always know. Like every week there's a new model, there's a new version, or there's an improvement. But locally, it is also interesting to see the interest and the fact that, because here in Switzerland, especially in Zurich itself, it's like Silicon Valley in California, but in the middle of Europe, because the people here, they're highly intelligent, they're well educated, and they're amazing at what they do, and they're really, really good. And then it always surprises me when I do speak to local businesses and explain to them what I'm doing, and then they're like, but you're a carpenter. Like, how is you're a trade? That doesn't work. It's like as if it's illegal. Which here, like, everyone's really well educated, and you can tell. But then they're like, but it makes sense. It's a really good idea. So how do we get started? I'm like, well, let's just do a trial. We'll see how it goes. If it works for both of us, great. We'll continue on. If it doesn't, we walk away, and it's no harm, because I'm not going to try and force anything onto people. They're like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. So it's getting out there.
And do you think, well, most of us Australians are pretty laid back, and you know, my favourite people in Australia are the tradies, and both my sons are tradies, and they're both nice blokes. Is your personality a bit different to the Swiss? Now, I must admit, nearly 50 years ago, I was in Switzerland, and they're then they were very different to Australians, because we're pretty outgoing, pretty friendly, happy. Do you think being an Aussie makes a difference when you're speaking with the Swiss?
Yeah, it depends which language I speak to them in. But they can certainly pick it when I speak the local Swiss German language here. But even that, they're very kind, they're very friendly. They're probably not as open as what we are. But I think when they interact with someone like Australians, we're kind of known to be quite open and friendly. Then they reflect that as well, which is really nice. So as soon as you do engage in a conversation with the business person and explain to how it works and how it can benefit them, then they open right up as well.
And the thing you just mentioned too is, you know, you're saying they're highly educated, in other words, in school and maybe university, whereas in the trades, it's an apprenticeship system, which I think is probably the most powerful way of learning, because, I mean, that's how we learn. It doesn't matter what age we are. Like I did a teaching degree, I dread to think how many decades ago. It absolutely useless now. So anything I do now, I have to learn, just like you do. But as a tradie, you know, you spend 4 years learning to do things. And I know my youngest son, who's a carpenter as well, telling me he was frustrated that he, you know, as an apprentice, he hadn't been taught how to hang doors. He wanted to learn how to hang doors. But he also had some learning difficulties. And doing the maths he had to pass to get through trade school, he figured out how to do that maths all himself. So there is an intelligence that we underestimate when people don't go through university, because university, I think, teaches you how to pass exams and things like that. Doesn't mean you can do something. And I must admit, when I left teachers' college, it took me many years to learn how to teach, and I don't think I was that good a teacher anyway. You do learn on the job. So, you know, when you're dealing with these people, are you thinking that they're saying, oh, how can a carpenter be this smart?
Yeah, I think so. They're kind of like, where do you get this idea, or how do you get these ideas? Why, in a way? This is not your field. What right do you have to kind of step out of your tunnel or your lane? But then when you explain to them, and sometimes I'm probably too open, I turn around and kind of tell them everything, as in, this is how it works, this is what it is, and this is what the potential result is. It might work, it might not. I'm not a salesman, and I think I do that quite bad, but I just tell them how it is, and the openness sometimes kind of helps as well. So they turn around and it's like, well, he's got nothing to hide. What he's selling or what he's trying to show actually makes sense. And because I was doing the first step is on a performance base. If I don't deliver results, they're not on the hook to pay a big bill.
And that's the interesting thing here. You're virtually doing this out of love in many ways. My late mentor would probably have a heart attack allowing you to do that, because he would say that the intervention you've already made has made a difference to their business anyway. And one of those connections could lead them to a multi-million-dollar turnover. And you might only get a little tiny piece of that. Whereas he would have what we call a value conversation. And I think you've mentioned when we were talking before that you'd look at the value which this would bring them back. And he would say, well, if that brings you in $1 million and it wasn't there before, well, I would like a piece of that. And that is an honest conversation he would have with people. And they would logically agree, or he'd walk away, which is quite interesting. So tell me, explain what it is. What do you call it, this thing that you do, and how did you do it?
Okay, so there's probably two out of the 5 services that I do. We'll touch on the first 2 mainly because they're the ones that that make the biggest impact. The first step, or the first offer that I do with people is called a database reactivation campaign. And that purely means that I would kind of investigate and extract as much information from their website, from their sales team, from the owner, or whoever is willing to share information about their business, and input that into an Android. So again, that I name it an Android just because it's a system. So it's pretty much just like a bot. Let's call it a bot for now. So then I train it on all of the information from a business, the terms and conditions, the terminology, because some businesses or industries don't like to use certain words. So you've got to choose the words, and you've got to choose the words what you don't use. And then once that goes through the testing phase, so I will test it heavily myself. And if I see something that I wouldn't kind of accept as a customer or a client of this business, then I need to change it. So I test it all up. And once I go through that phase, then I get the team to test it as well, as in the business themselves. And once they're happy with it and everything works, then we go onto a database. So the database of the old marketing campaigns that people have not converted, they've showed interest, they've given their details, because data protection is very important when you're doing this type of service. And as long as they're all within the last probably 9 to 12 months, then we go onto that list, and I'll do, let's say they've got a database of 10,000 people. I will say, let's trial the first 3,000. Let's do that and see how we go. And once I release it onto those 3,000 leads, it will automatically text them whenever I push go. It will just slowly kind of feed each lead through the system. And then the first message is what's the only one that is prompted. So that's the only one that I set up myself, because there's legal terms that you need to have a part of the first message to even be approved, a phone number and everything. So if let's use the SMS, for example, the first message will go out to this lead. And then if it gets a response, that's where the AI takes over. And it's got the guardrails set, it's got all the information about the business, and then it will hold the conversation, and every message it will change or it will adapt to what the response is, depending on how I've trained it. If, for example, if it's a solar panel company, and if they're reaching out to an old lead, it could be that they might need to have a certain amount of square meterage on their roof to put panels, or that their house might have to be facing a certain direction or whatever. So there could be certain points that the business selling the solar panels, they need a lead or a client to reach this criteria. So my Android will go through those points, and if it's yes, then it says, beautiful, you've qualified. Now we can book you into an appointment with an advisor or a salesperson, whatever, and then they can take over from there. And it's all done via the chat. My Android can then scan the calendar of the salesperson, find a free appointment, and then communicate that to the lead. They say, bang, next Tuesday at 10 a.m., Stephen's free. Does that work? Yep, no worries. And then it books it into their calendar. The salesperson's had nothing to do with it. They just need to turn up at 10 o'clock next Tuesday with all their information and take over from there.
It does sound amazing, really. So who would you say this is for?
In the shortest amount of words, it is for any type of business in any industry that's got a database of at least 5,000 leads sitting there untouched, because I can customize it to whatever business. Last year, I had a client that they had a cruise ship, but it wasn't just holidays they sold. They actually sold villas on their boat. So that was the same thing. I did exactly the same campaign to them. And it was like what you mentioned before, where the value of the sales varies. It could have been a $7,000 cruise, or it could have been an $800,000 villa that they sold on their boat. And that's where a lot of trust comes into it. So I did a very small booking fee. Out of 4,000 leads, I booked 200 new appointments for these guys. And it was a potential revenue of over 2 million. And I had a very small portion of that.
Yeah.
Very small. But that was my mistake.
That is the danger of that, is that you're too nice in that regard. Whereas my guy wouldn't have done that.
No.
But then again, just because they got all those, they still had to they were qualified leads, but that doesn't mean they go through, because, it depends. It might be a 2% success rate, it might be a 10%. In fact, you may actually improve that. That is the biggest issue that any consultant has, is keeping something alive where they get that appointment. Most people run a mile than try and do that, whereas you've automated it. It's nice and friendly, and people can ignore it rather than try and do a phone call. Most salespeople would love that, to have an appointment on their calendar.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, especially with that, like the reactivation kind of campaign or the system. That's a good one, because it's literally potentially generating revenue from nothing. They've had to do no extra work. They've done it in the past, but then they're just leads are sitting there. And if there's a 2 or 5, or it could even be like a 7% value sitting there, and they don't have to do anything, then it's a huge, like, the risk to reward ratio is massive.
So does this run through your servers, or do you put something on their servers to do this? How does that work?
So I run that through my system that I've got. So on my CRM, that's where kind of the motor of it all is. And then I can connect into almost any other CRM via API. And it could also go down to the local mechanic down the road who's still maybe doing an Excel spreadsheet and Google Calendar or something like that. And that's the beauty of it. So there's no, to your question before, like, what is your ideal client? There is no one ideal client. If they've got a database, it'll work, because it's so customizable. And the best thing with all of the different technology that we have now and automations is possible. If I said to a few people, if you can think it, pretty sure I'll be able to do it. And if I don't know how to do it now, I'll work it out.
Did you teach yourself to make this, or did AI help you make this?
A bit of both. There was a course actually from an Australian guy that specializes in this. He's an old marketer, and he specializes in this as well. So it's not my own creation at all. But I've put a little bit of salt and pepper on top of it and changed it so that it suits people a little bit better. But there's been a lot of books being read of kind of staying on the tracks and being disciplined and everything. But a lot of AI screenshots. How do I do this? And back and forward. So there's a lot of self-learning as well.
I can tell you, Philip Dramarka, who is probably the top-rated Wisepreneurs podcast episode, he's in the Czech Republic, and he's into automations and AI. And I noticed he commented on something on LinkedIn the other day. It was all in the Czech language, but you can press a button and it translates. And what he was doing, he's answering to another guy in the Czech Republic who was translating an English book into the Czech language so he could read it. Because what happens is, when you've worked all day, at the end of the day, if you're from the Czech Republic, it's hard to read the English because you're tired. Yes. So he went through this big process to get it all translated. And Philip Dramarka said, well, you just feed that in, feed the question that you want to do into Claude code, and it will do it for you. Just go and have lunch. And I thought, Claude code, because I subscribe to Claude and use Claude a lot because I really like it. So the other day, I said to Claude Code, every month, because I look after about 18 websites and I do all the analytics and the SEO and all the management, and I write all the articles and all that. So I keep these finely tuned websites for my clients, who, mind you, I've had for 15 to 20 years. I haven't lost any clients yet. Mm-hmm. I have to do this process. So I have to download all the analytics, and then I have to upload it to Claude individually, and then I have to run the prompt. And then when it's done that, I have to cut and paste it into the Gmail and clean it all up. Then I have to put in all the email addresses and the subject line and then send it. And it's about 6 hours work a month. And I asked Claude if it would do it. It automated the whole process. All I have to do now is download the files from my analytics program. But once I've got it in there, I run the program. It sends all through to the email correctly formatted. All I've got to do is check the email now. And that's because I clicked on this translate thing and saw Philip Dramarco said, use Claude Code. It's saving me 4 to 6 hours, and I'm not frustrated anymore knowing I've got to do this bloody thing again.
Yeah.
And that's where AI is just incredible. So it's advanced again.
And it's evolving so fast as well. Like I've built a business on exactly this, and I can't even keep up myself. It goes so fast, and every day at the very start of this, I'd be really overwhelmed when I would see like all the new shiny toys, and I'd try it out, and then I looked at the back of in the evening, and I was like, I've achieved nothing. I've wasted time on trying all these different tools out because everything was coming out so fast, and now this is going to save you time. And I look back, it's caused me more chaos than what it's solved. But that's where I kind of pencil out a bit of time each week for exactly that. Try this. But then after that time period's done, I either go back to what I've been doing that's working, or I'll implement something new that may improve one or two parts. But yeah, it's changing really fast.
Well, I did do some. I signed up to another AI program, which is a database program, but it's called Notion, which is really a note-taking app, but it's got the most brilliant AI in there, because I needed to start, for example, with a podcast, podcast guests, all the processing and all that. I bought a template that I fitted in there, and then the Notion AI actually helped me customize it to my needs. And I'm going, this is getting incredible. This is really helpful. So a lot of these programs actually help you with their AI, and they're getting much better. But I looked the other day, and I'm subscribing to about $11,000 worth of annual subscriptions. And I'm thinking, that's an awful lot of products. So I'm having to say, no more of those. Claude's got this other one now too, which is like an agent. And I said, I need you to help me fix up my Gmail. I use Google Workspace, so my domain name emails are in there. I said, can you go through this and help me sort it out and unsubscribe from the 50,000, newsletters I'm trying to read and never getting around to? And it just went through and said, do this, do this, do this. Look, hasn't got it quite right, but I'll go through it today and tidy it up. But it's getting more and more helpful. So a lot of our listeners are experts in their fields. They're not sure about AI, and they're worried that they're missing the boat. You're not a coder, but you've been using AI. Where would you suggest people start nowadays to get into this sort of thing, to help them even in their own businesses, or maybe choose to create a product using their expertise like you have?
Anyone can start with the free version of ChatGPT, or even Gemini is extremely good as well. But I think the biggest mistake people do is they turn around and think it's like a magic wand. It doesn't, just because you type in, clean up my emails, here's my email address, and expect it to go and reorganize everything and put files or the PDFs in certain things and all the bills you need to pay in through your accounting software, and it's been posted the right numbers and everything. It doesn't work like that. It's not a magic wand. It's the output of these tools is only as good as what the input you give it. So that's one thing is learn I'd say learn how to prompt, or depends on what you're trying to solve, and then learn how to solve that by inputting a very simple input.
And I think that's the lesson there. You've just got to try and learn with it and use it. But I found, like, I bought a new TV the other day. The old one was about 10 years old. I asked Gemini, how do I set it up? How do I set up the sound bar, which was a different product? How do I do this? How do I do this? It just went through it all. It researched it. It told me, do this, do this, do this. Now, this is the paid version that I use, because I use Google Workspace and I pay extra to have the better one. It's getting so good that you probably don't need a manual anymore for some of this stuff. So maybe people could just say, figure out how to use your TV better, or how to fix this thing, or to see whether this product works, or even research good products that you can use. Just don't do what I do and pay for like $12,000 a year worth of subscriptions, But, one of the subscriptions I had with my Google Workspace, I said, do I still need this? And it had a look at it and said, probably don't. That saved me the problem. I don't know how good the Swiss franc is compared to the American dollar, but in Australia, American dollars are very expensive. So American dollar subscriptions really hurt a lot in Australia. It could be 1.5 times.
Yeah.
So for me to get rid of one of those subscriptions in American dollars saves me a lot of money. As you know, running a business, if it's not an expense, it goes through to profit, the bit you can actually keep.
Definitely.
So is there something else you'd like to say? Because we've had a good conversation here.
Yeah. I mentioned that there was probably two services that I do, and I'll focus on the database reactivation. And the other main one out of the 5 that I do would be the speed to lead. And that purely means that the custom Android, like I explained before, is all about the business. It knows everything. It knows its products, everything. And it literally engages with a lead that has just submitted their information. So a campaign or a business that's just started a new ad campaign, you get 25 people that put their details in. There could be 3 of those 25s that are actually interested, and there could be the other 22 that aren't all that interested. They just did it, I don't know why. So my Android, that goes through, and it can filter those people as well. So then they don't go in through to the salesperson's calendar and waste their time. They kind of go to the meeting, they turn around and say, okay, so here's your salary. It might be a mortgage broker or something. So here's your salary, this and this and this. You've got 25 grand worth of credit card debt. You don't qualify, sorry. So there's 45 minutes or half an hour of both of the person's time wasted. But the speed to lead, again, that can be used for any type of business, any type of ad campaign, and it literally just engages with the leads immediately. It gets them across the line, whether they're interested, or if they're not interested, then it filters them out before they get through to the salesperson's team, and it just saves time.
Well, we call that a qualified lead. Have they got a need? Have they got the money or the authority to actually purchase this product? If you've dealt that for a salesperson, they're going to be very, very happy. But the other thing is, this is call it a robot or automation. Yeah. This is not an expensive person sitting there, during the day, and they're not there at night. You're saving the company quite a lot of money in terms of hiring staff. But as I said earlier, there are going to be, and there are probably companies out there right now, with one person working with robots, automations that are doing a lot of their work. Just like my business has now automated my reporting process. That's an automation that's working for me and allowing me to spend time doing something else. Now, you mentioned you are still working during the day and you're running this at night. You're young enough to survive this, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I've got, like I said before, my beautiful wife and 3 young boys as well. They're 4, 6, and 8. So I've learned over the last 6 or 8 years that you can function on very little sleep. So now that the kids are actually sleeping through the night, I thought, well, now maybe I can invest my time into a business. So I am still working during the day. with a very large general contractor as a senior construction manager. And I really love my job. It's stressful, it's hard, but it's also very rewarding when we're building these big buildings and we can actually deliver something. But I also don't want to be doing that until I'm 60, 65 or 70. So this is something that I hope that I can buy back my time and generate value for not just myself, but for businesses and customers as well, because it works on both sides of the fence. What I'm doing now, it delivers better customer service for a business's clients or their leads, and it also saves time for a business as well. So it's not just a one-sided coin. It helps both sides of the fence, which I like as well.
Oh, I think it's brilliant. And I think the story is fantastic. So I'm hoping people, who listened, got through to this stage, just understand that you can do this. And it does take an intelligence to do and a curiosity. And, you've obviously got a learning curve. So what about your kids? Are they practical too? What do they like to do?
Yeah, well, they're quite often down here in the basement. We've got a little bit of a hobby room or a work room. They spend a lot of time down here with the hammer and nails and drills. And I've always said that's where when I have kids, whether it's a boy or girl, I want to make sure they know how to use their hands, start a fire, cut wood, and they spend quite a lot of time down here in the room painting or drawing or just making a mess, pretty much. But they love it.
That sounds great because, look, I talk to a lot. Well, I don't get out as much anymore, but, when I talk to my physio, because I managed to get myself injured in my exercise and stuff like that, and I said, talk about your kids. They're practical, and I'm saying to them, if they're not academic, don't force them to go through school. Let them get out into a trade because guess what happens? If they've got what it takes, they will go where they need to go and they will learn what they need to learn.
Yeah. Worst case, we can always go back on the tools as well. That's not going to die in that trade. It's not like sales. It's probably a little bit easier now with AI and these type of things, but building a house, there's only hands can do that. And if you've learned it, no one can take it away from you.
Well, as my sons, my youngest, who's the carpenter, worked in Geelong. Now he's up in North Queensland working. He's never been without work. My other son headed off. He lives in Whistler, works as an electrician. He lives on Whistler because he earned enough money and saved enough money to buy an apartment up there. And it's really difficult some places to get tradespeople because in some places they can't afford the rent, just probably like London would be now, I'd say. If you're a tradie working in London, you might have to live way out and travel in. So that's the issue. But you're dead right. You can always work with your hands if you've got a trade. So, Darren, how do people find you?
Yeah, well, the best way is probably on LinkedIn. It's just Darren Waldron. I'm quite active there. I've got a team supporting me there as well, which is great. They do an amazing job. We come up with the posts, and that's probably the best place. Or on my website, which is www.dswaldron.ch.
Right. I'll put these in the show notes so people will be able to find you. And if this sparks something for you, please reach out to Darren because I think this sounds like a fabulous product for some of the people listening. And I think you're going to go far on this one. This is a ripper. Right. Thank you very much, Darren, for joining the Wisepreneurs podcast.
Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it.
That's all for today's Wisepreneurs podcast. Age is no barrier when you're a wisepreneur crafting a purpose-driven career. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Visit wisepreneurs.com.au to join my newsletter for exclusive strategies and ideas, and connect with me on LinkedIn for more insights. I'm Nigel Rawlins, and I'll see you next time to keep building your future with impact.